America and Israel claim they are winning this war, and that is largely Trump's narrative. But in reality, many argue that the situation is far more complicated. Even though their warplanes continue launching bombs and missiles and carrying out strikes, it increasingly looks like an attempt to demonstrate power and intimidate Iran, to show that they can do whatever they want and that no force on earth can stand in their way. Yet the reality may be quite different. In this entire conflict, they may have made a mistake that is slowly turning into a trap for themselves. They once again tried to prove that everything can be controlled through military power. And that is where, according to this view, they made their biggest mistake. At this moment, if you look from the outside, it may seem that the fighting has slowed down and the situation has become somewhat calmer. But this is not real peace. It is a hidden fire burning beneath the surface. America and Israel believe they have brought the situation under control. In reality, however, they may have entered a position that is gradually moving beyond their control. The reason is simple. This war was launched to demonstrate dominance, but its consequences are no longer limited to Iran. They are spreading across the world. The biggest mistake is viewing this conflict solely as America and Israel versus Iran. In reality, there are two wars happening at the same time. The first war is the one everyone sees, the war in the sky. America and Israel are using advanced technology, modern weapons, and air power to strike Iran. They have weakened parts of Iran's defenses and targeted important facilities. From this perspective, it appears they are ahead and winning. However, supporters of the opposing view argue that Iran's most critical military infrastructure remains buried deep underground. According to this argument, America and Israel have not significantly damaged Iran's core military capabilities, and have instead become increasingly frustrated, leading to continued strikes on various targets. The second war, the one they may not have fully anticipated, has become a much greater challenge. This war is being fought against the global economy itself. And here, Iran has focused on something that America and Israel cannot easily control: the Strait of Hormuz. It is a relatively small waterway on the map, but in reality, around 20% of the world's oil and gas trade passes through it. A significant portion of the global energy supply depends on this single route. Now imagine what happens if uncertainty suddenly emerges there. What happens if fear takes hold? That is precisely where Iran has applied pressure. Iran has not completely closed the route because it does not need to. Instead, it has created an environment where every ship, every company, and every insurance provider begins asking the same question: is this route still safe? Through the use of drones, missiles, and the threat of maritime mines, Iran has sent a message: this passage is no longer as secure as it once was. That message alone has shaken the entire system. The effects appeared quickly. Some ships reduced their traffic. Energy markets reacted, oil prices began rising, and the consequences were no longer limited to a single country. They affected the entire world. This is where the game changes. No matter how much military strength America and Israel display in the air, they cannot easily change this reality. Because this is no longer purely a military battle. It is a battle of geography and economics. Bombs can destroy buildings and infrastructure, but they cannot erase the strategic importance of a vital maritime route. This is where Iran gains leverage. Iran understands that it cannot win a direct conventional confrontation against America and Israel. So it has chosen to exert pressure in an area that lies beyond their complete control. For years, America and Israel have often believed they could intervene and reshape situations through force. But according to this perspective, they have ignited a fire that is now beginning to spread back toward them. They expected a swift campaign that would achieve their objectives quickly. What they may not have anticipated is that the conflict would expand far beyond the battlefield and into areas that are much harder to control. The question now becomes very clear. If America and Israel dominate the skies while Iran continues to play its game underground, at sea and within the global economy, then who is actually winning? The calculations that America and Israel started this war with may no longer hold. Now they face three difficult options. The first is negotiation. If they sit down with Iran after such extensive military operations, many observers may interpret it as a sign of weakness. It could send a message that their original goals were not fully achieved. Some argue that this perception is already spreading, while America seeks support from various countries to maintain stability and preserve ceasefire efforts. The second option is to do nothing. But in that scenario, energy prices could remain elevated. The resulting economic pressure would affect not only other countries but also America itself. Higher costs would increase pressure on ordinary citizens, and that pressure could eventually translate into political consequences for the US president. The third option is escalation. That would mean expanding the conflict further and potentially involving ground operations. But Iran's geography is extremely challenging. History shows that such wars are often easy to begin, but very difficult to end. They become long, expensive, and unpredictable. For that reason, many analysts believe that a large-scale ground invasion of Iran would be extraordinarily difficult. Another important point also emerges. The pressure campaign that America and Israel are attempting to build has not worked perfectly. Iran does not need to shut everything down completely. By creating uncertainty and fear, it can still destabilize the broader system. This reveals Iran's strategy. Iran is not necessarily trying to achieve a decisive victory. Instead, it is trying to survive and endure. As long as it can maintain this situation, pressure on the global economy continues. And that pressure eventually reaches political leaders, including Trump. As a result, America and Israel may find themselves trapped in a difficult position. If they retreat, it may appear weak. If they advance, they risk greater costs. If they remain in the middle, the problem may continue growing. That is why many people argue that this war is not merely a war. It is the consequence of a strategic miscalculation, one that is gradually evolving into a larger challenge for America itself. Yet one truth remains clear. Nobody is truly winning. America and Israel are demonstrating military power, but they have not found a lasting solution. Iran is creating pressure, but it is also suffering significant costs, and in the middle stands the rest of the world where ordinary people are paying the highest price. This conflict teaches another important lesson. Power is not defined only by weapons. Sometimes a strategic location, a carefully chosen tactic, and a decision made at the right moment can place even the strongest powers under pressure. And perhaps that is why this conflict is no longer just about America, Israel, or Iran. It has become a conflict whose consequences are being felt across the entire world.